Sean Bell is a retired Air Vice-Marshal and military analyst. Sean, welcome back. Good to see you. I think the military term is a sit rep. All these weeks in, where are we?
Yeah, good afternoon, Jamie. I mean, the brief sit rep would be the American military operation appears to be going relatively smoothly, but whether America is any closer to achieving its strategic objectives, that feels a long way off. And the worry, I think, is that with the reports of these US Marine Corps personnel arriving in the region, you know, with the Boxer and the Tripoli aircraft sort of carriers, mini carriers, that's a significant, a formidable capability. But as soon as you start putting boots on the ground, suddenly we're into the prospects of body bags going home and a much longer campaign. That doesn't feel like something President Trump wants to get involved with.
We were just reporting earlier on, Mr. Trump saying he wants to take Iran's oil. Just how feasible militarily is that?
Well, yes, I mean, they're talking about Karg Island, that island that's just off the coast of Iran, where most of Iran's oil exports go from. As a military operation, I don't think that would be too difficult for America to do. The challenge is that, of course, there's no hardened facilities there for the American soldiers when they land to hide or to gain protection, and that would make them incredibly vulnerable while they're there. It's also not entirely clear how that helps the strategic objectives, because the Straits of Hormuz, some 200 miles south, is where the real problem lies. And I suspect it's Keshm Island, which is just off the coast of the Straits of Hormuz. It's quite a big island. It's about 100 miles long and about 25 miles wide. That will be one that would be my strategic focus for, because you could make life very difficult then for Iran to still control the Straits. The downside is there's about 120,000 civilians live there. It will be a major operation.
3,500 American military personnel arriving in the region. Do you think this is genuine preparation for ground operations, or is it more of a signal for Tehran?
Well, Jamie, you and I have been around some of these operations and the wars for some time, and if you look at the relative numbers, America, I think, ended up with close to 300,000 for the invasion of Iraq, and that's a country much smaller than Iran. And facing the US forces would be a force of IRGC, probably over 1 million men and women under arms. So the numbers that the US is talking about are just not credible if you're looking at a ground operation that's sustainable. I think far more likely is that, as you suggest, President Trump, he loves to do a deal. You can only do a deal if you have leverage. Just by these troop movements, it might sow the seeds of doubt in the Iranian leadership that America might just be serious, and therefore give President Trump a bit more influence in the forthcoming negotiations.
And when you hear of pressure at home on President Trump and pressure from allies, how much does that play into the military voices around the president?
Well, it's a fundamental question, Jamie, because I spent a lifetime in the military, and before we went on these sorts of operations, you'd make very clear to the political classes what your choices were, but also what the risks were. I had war-gamed this with the British military over the years, and I played Iran in part of those war games, and it never ends well. You know, militarily, you have no issue with dominating the Iranians, but they always end up controlling the Straits. So you'd have to assume, based on that, because the American military are not stupid, they will have war-gamed this. The advice of the president was, this is predictable. So the only person who's really seemed surprised at this is President Trump. He's got himself into this mess. You know, he's now proving it's easier to start a war than it is to end one.
Sean, good to see you. We'll talk again in coming weeks, I'm sure. Sean Bell, the retired Air Vice-Marshal and military analyst.